The Kosher Crash Course. This is every Thursday morning when we learn about everything you need to know about kosher. What we're doing here, guys, is basically making kosher practical. It's not that difficult. It really, really is not that difficult. It's very hard. Why is kosher so hard? I want to tell you, if you were keeping kosher 100 years ago or 15 years ago, 15, right? It might have been difficult. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of kosher restaurants. There's not a lot of kosher products. Today, I went to Chicago with you, and there was probably 100 different kinds of kosher bagels in the one Emma's thing, right?
And we missed the best restaurant in Chicago for kosher meat.
What's that called again? The Guide to the Perplexed? Yeah. So he was here in Shul a few weeks. He was here in Shul a few weeks ago. Yeah. So I wasn't here that day. But
somebody should go to LA and see how many kosher restaurants.
Yeah, there's kosher restaurants everywhere these days. And also when you walk into any supermarket, there is more kosher products than you could possibly imagine. I would say that your average supermarket today, kosher products than the kosher store had 20 years ago. Right? That's how easy it is to keep kosher. Good morning, Charlie Midas. Charlie Midas from Chicago. They also have treif. By the way, in a restaurant, in the supermarket in South Africa, in the regular supermarket in South Africa, there is so much kosher food. I want to show you something. I'm going to put it on the screen. You won't believe what I'm about to show you. I'm going to show it to you on the screen right now. Here. Hopefully I can find it. Give me just a moment. This is an actual sign that a member of one of my friends took and sent me. Here it is. You ready? Okay, all right. So look at this. This is an actual supermarket in South Africa. Can you see what it says on the sign? I'm going to try to hold still. Hold on. I'm going to zoom in. See?
Non-kosher.
So they actually label the non-kosher stuff now in South Africa, right? Can you imagine? In a regular supermarket, right? Not yet in Palm Beach Gardens. We're getting there. We're working on it. God willing. Anyways, good morning, Terry from Atlanta, Charlie from Chicago, Alicia from West Palm Beach, Andy, Marty, and Rob that are in the live studio audience, and who is with us on YouTube? That would be Elaine. Nice to see Elaine. Let's hit this class right away. Any questions or comments, feel free to question. We are in the middle and finishing up today the laws of insects, right? Insects play a major deal in the laws of kosher. Now, this would have nothing to do with the supermarket, because even if you buy a kosher vegetable or fruit, you still need to check for the insects which may or may not be in there. By the way, Rob, you don't need to be kosher to be concerned about the disgusting animals and insects which might be inside of your food. I mean, regardless of kosher, you shouldn't be eating this stuff. Right, you know what I'm saying? So let's not blame kosher for making our lives difficult. When you have to remove the worm from your apple, you'd rather have these laws. You know what I'm saying? Okay, good. So let's do this over here. Where are we holding? So we learned last week about two kinds of insects that are in the water, and today we're going to learn about two kinds of insects that are in the ground, right? And that's going to wrap it up for us. Now, you can always watch previous classes. Good morning, Hannah. Andy's here with us live. You can always watch previous classes at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. And soon, very soon, we're going to sequence those classes very clearly under the Kosher Crash Course. So they'll be easily sequenced so you can watch them and review them in order. Okay, good. But generally speaking, they all are there under the video section. We just haven't organized them clearly yet. In general, there are two kinds of insects that are infesting the ground. Number one is those that are sexually reproduced. And you can't eat them because they fall into the biblical prohibition of creepy crawlies of the earth. And then there are insects that are not sexually produced, but are produced from the decomposition of the fruit or the vegetable. I'm no insect reproductive expert, but from what I understand in Torah, there are other ways of reproducing, right, that are unknown to humans. I mean, humans don't reproduce through decomposition, but apparently insects do, right? I don't understand this, not through their own decomposition, but through the decomposition of their host site, which would be the decomposing fruits or vegetables. As we say in South Africa, we call it vrot. If it's vrot, it means it's not good for eating anymore, right? So there are those of them that are prohibited to be eaten, and those that are allowed to be eaten from this category, from those that are made from the decomposing, and we'll explain them in a moment. Now, eating fruits and vegetables which have insects goes as follows. If you find a fruit and vegetable which has insects in it while we're still attached to the tree or the ground, those fruits are not allowed to be eaten because those insects inside of them, even if they never left the fruit or the vegetable, are considered the creepy crawlies of the earth, and it's the biblical prohibition. But if the insects came into there, they formed in the fruits and vegetables after they were picked from the tree, after they were picked from their source of growth, and you can tell that these are the kind of insects that come from the decomposition, right, of the inside of the fruit, and they did not come from the outside. So it's not like they came into the fruit from the outside, but somehow you know that these insects came from the decomposition of the fruit after it was picked in the tree. And also your eyes are able to see that there's no holes from which they would have entered, right? In such a way that you know that the fruits, that these fruits and vegetables have insects that were created after the fruit was taken from the tree, and they never left the fruit or the vegetable. In such a case, you are allowed to eat the fruit with the insect inside of it because they haven't managed to crawl on the earth, and therefore they aren't included in the biblical prohibition, right? Right, so that's the two kinds of insects of the earth. One is if you know for sure that it came from the decomposition and never came out and it never had anything to do with the earth, then it never had a chance to crawl upon the earth. It's not technically included in the prohibition. Practically speaking, since there's always a concern that the insects were created inside of the fruit while it was still attached, it's very difficult to know unless you're an insectologist. Right? It's practically impossible to know whether the insects were created while it was attached to the tree or after it was attached to the tree. If it was attached to the tree when the insects came in, then it would have been considered crawling upon the earth, the biblical prohibition. Therefore, we avoid all these kind of insects because we're not really experts in the differentiation of the two categories. Now, what happens if you have a fruit or vegetable which does have a hole? So it's got a hole. You can see that something might have entered through that, or it's got one of those, suspicious stains on the outside. So in such a case, you should check the fruit if it has an insect inside, and also you should cut around the hole in case pieces of the insect were left, some residue of the insect was left around the hole, and throw it into the garbage. And don't eat that part of the fruit, and you can't eat any part of the fruit without checking it properly for the insects inside of it. Because we're worried that it might still have the insect inside of it, an insect that went out of the fruit and back inside of it, right? In which case, it would whether the insect started when it was attached to the tree, or whether the insect started from the decomposition and it went out and back in both cases, it would be completely biblically prohibited. And you got to check this insect. Look out for the insects inside of this fruit.
So I think the distinction you're saying
Yeah.
is that it shouldn't have come from the earth, because one way or another it got planted from the outside. It could have been.
You mean what was planted from the outside?
The seed, the initial, it's like a butterfly that comes out of a chrysalis. And you have something that develops into a worm, but it had to be planted by some creature from the outside.
Right.
It's just that.
No, I don't think the insect would have to be planted from a creature from the outside.
When you talk about decomposition, insects will eat and then cause decomposition, but they don't, like maggots or anything. They don't come out of it.
What is maggots? What do you say not like maggots? What do you mean not like maggots? Where do maggots come from?
From some eggs.
From eggs.
Of?
Where do the eggs come from?
From the mama and papa maggots.
Oh, so those are sexually reproduced.
Well, sexually or.
Are you saying that there's no such thing as an insect that comes purely from decomposition? How do you know
I
that?
thought maggots did.
No, they do not come from.
I got your point about not coming from the earth, but you're
They are
saying it's
not
also.
coming
I see Shakespeare has joined us as well. Mark Shakespeare, good morning.
I'll guarantee I'm 100% right.
Look, I'll tell you what. I don't think,
Don't eat the worm.
guys, exactly. The general rule is here. Let's be clear, Andy. You're right. You're very practical. Okay, guys, let's steer clear from the worms. Nobody here is looking for some sort of a loophole to say, okay, you can eat the worm. You know what I mean? If you need looking for that kind of loophole, you might need a doctor, not a rabbi, right? But the fact of the matter is, nobody here, I don't think any of us, not even Shakespeare, who's with us, is an insectologist, right? It would be very interesting. Entomologist? Why do they have to make it complicated? Call it an insectologist, so we know what it is. Okay, fine. All right, maybe Elaine. Elaine is the kind of person that typically knows this kind of stuff. Good morning, Keith is with us on YouTube. Good. So look, the fact of the matter is, we don't really know how this stuff works. At least not us. I wonder if scientists know. Does Siri know? Can somebody ask Siri? And what did Siri tell you?
Maggots.
I didn't ask you about maggots.
It's a larva of a fly.
It's a larva.
I'm not asking about maggots. I asked you, is there such a thing?
I looked at, no, there's no such thing.
Let's see.
You didn't look the other.
I did look.
How do I do this?
first.
Hey, Siri.
Any insect derived from
Are any insects
derived.
produced without sexual reproduction?
Okay, I found this on the web for any insects produced without sexual reproduction. Check it out.
Check it out.
There is asexual reproduction within insects.
But it's not coming out of the.
Okay, whatever. Siri's too complicated right now, so let's just keep it. Dan Geiger, good morning. Bottom line is, Andy called it. Andy called it. He said, listen, guys, let's avoid the insects at all costs. The fact of the matter is, and this is just to the point, it shows us how careful we need to be about these insects. You know, I always think of a lobster as a giant, massive cockroach. I think of a kangaroo as a giant rat, right? Yeah, it's a giant rat. Think about it. The giant rat with a tail. It looks like a giant rat. Anyways, but I'm just saying, think about it. If you're eating this insect, just because it's small, it doesn't mean it's not disgusting, right? So let's steer clear from what this is called shkotzim or ramosim, which is abominations and creepy crawlies. So we're going to go just a little bit further over here, just to finish up. I'm going to go just a little bit further, guys. All right. So now fruits and vegetables which have a black stain, remove the stain, dig it all the way in the depth of the fruit of the flesh, so that the place. Because deep in the fruit is where it starts to materialize the fruit, and you can't eat it because just like you can't eat the insect itself. Now, what happens if you're coming to eat fruits and vegetables where you know that there's a high chance that these fruits and vegetables have infestations? Like lettuce, exactly. So fruits and vegetables that you know that they typically will have infestations. You're not allowed to eat them before checking them for insects. You got to check them, right? Yesterday I had a pastrami. What was it? It was a schnitzel sandwich. I put some lettuce on top, so I had to take the lettuce and check it and do what I had to do to make sure that it was kosher. You know what I mean? It wasn't just lettuce kosher, right? Furthermore, even if you sprayed them, the fruits, in order to make it like insecticides to make sure that the insects don't come. Nevertheless, even if it's sprayed by insecticides, it's not foolproof, and you have to make sure that you check them before you eat them, and therefore you should be careful to check all your fruits, vegetables, and your legumes, right? Each one has to be checked. You can't just say, okay, one out of a batch. You got to check each one under the light, right? For the various insects that are typically found in them, and worms as well. And those that have holes or seemed like infected with insects, just chuck them. You should be careful not to cook these fruits and and the legumes before you check them as well. Because if you cook them, you're running into other problems of cooking with a non-kosher product inside of your food, and that's when you have to start worrying about being 1 in 60 and those kind of things. It's a mess. So rather check them before you cook them. Now, what happens if you did cook them before you check them? So the fruits and vegetables that needed to be cooked, and you did that needed to be checked before being cooked, and you made a mistake. You didn't check them before cooking. Right, so what do you do? If you're talking about a fruits and vegetable which is seldom infested, because there's different kinds, right? If it's seldom infested, then it's okay to eat them, because there's a question if it has if it had an insect in the first instance, and also there's a second doubt. First doubt is there an insect? Second doubt is, was it canceled out 1 to 60, right? But So whenever the Torah has a case, the Talmud has a case of a double doubt, we go lenient. If you have double doubt. But if you have only one doubt, in other words, if it's typically infested, then there's no real doubt if it's infested. You know it's there. The question is if it's 1 to 60 or not, then in that case, it's only a single doubt, you go strict, right? And now there's actually a whole chart. There's a whole chart of how every single food you're supposed to check them for insects. Let me just do one of them, which would be one of the most notorious characters, which is the strawberry.
If you wash lettuce, you would have made it gotten to the point where it's a double doubt, where you know.
If you wash the lettuce, then it's fine.
If you wash the lettuce, but you don't know that you got everything. It's just there's a doubt. You washed it, but you don't know that you got it.
Why don't you just wash it? Oh, because you only washed it. Let me tell you how to check it properly. Let me tell you how to check lettuce. Yes, I guess. So lettuce is something which is considered to be infested. Right? And we're not talking about 4-inch long insects. You're talking about tiny little nothings that you can still see with the naked eye, right? Now, you're looking for little green things that dig little tunnels inside of the leaf, right? What you do is separate the leaves and then soak it in water, rub them with a sponge under the stream of water, and then check each leaf under the light from both sides. Okay, so you separate them, you rinse them, you soak them, then you rub them under the streaming, like you rub them with the sponge under the stream of water, and then you check both sides under the light, right?
Then you put the lettuce on a grill.
What?
You put lettuce on a grill. You grill lettuce.
Grill the lettuce? But if you grill it with the insect inside, you're cooking the insect.
Inside.
Why not? What happens if it's dead? What, they know that they have to leave when there's fire? No, you can't grow an insect. Okay, that was lettuce. Let me just tell you how to do strawberries, which is one of the most complicated. Some people don't eat strawberries, you know that? Some religious Jews won't eat strawberries in general. Right, so here's how you do it. You can do it, right? So what are you looking for in strawberries, which are typically infested? You're looking for little creepy crawlies that crawl underneath the inside of the flesh already from the time that you buy them. The parts that are folded in, the strawberry has like these folds sometimes, or little cracks or crevices in them, and the soft parts, so those are especially need to be careful. So here's what you do.
Is there a way you have to cut the strawberry?
Yeah, so hold on. So here's what you do. First of all, you should buy the hard strawberries, not the soft ones, not the ones that are like mushy and cracked. You should try to avoid those ones. Right now, what you do is you cut the top of the strawberry, you decapitate it with a little bit of the skin attached, so a little bit of the red. So you take off the green thing on top, take it off, together with a little bit of the red, right? And then you remove also the suspected areas, wherever there's a crack, cut it in half, and then you soak it in water for 3 minutes, and you wash it on all sides under a strong flow of water. It's also advisable to cut it in half and to check with your eyes for inside to see if there's any insects inside, or to cut it even before you soak it. Now, recently, they've discovered other kinds of infestations, which are actually very difficult to remove. And therefore, you have a few choices. Either you can soak them 3 separate times, soak and wash, right? And then you crush them or cook them. And that way, if you crush them, it's not considered a full, if there's anything left in there, it's not considered a full insect, and it's a more lenient way of progressing. Or you could actually peel away a thin layer of the fruit, and then, after you rinse it. I mean, strawberries get a little complicated, right? And that's how you can understand why some people will avoid them. But generally speaking, at least I want you to be cognizant and aware of the prohibition of the, of the eating of insects. Then we start to look at all fruits a little bit differently, fruits and vegetables. I mean, you look at the humble banana and you say, thank God for the banana. Such a nice guy. Doesn't have any... Yeah, nice and simple. It doesn't get complicated, right? Nothing to check. You just peel and eat. Simple, nice and easy. It's the most kosher thing in the world. You buy a banana, you can buy it anywhere in the world. You can buy it on a street corner in Mexico. You buy it, you peel it, you eat it, finished. You're eating kosher. And then you look at the strawberry. It's like, you got like different kinds of Jews, right? You got the tzaddik, the rasha, the Beinoni, right? You got the righteous, the wicked, the middle guy. The same thing with fruits. You got the complicated ones, like human beings. Humans with baggage and humans without baggage, you know? Well, I don't know if there's any humans without baggage.
Rabbi, if each of your kids eats 6 strawberries for lunch,
Today's work.
I mean, really, I don't have to get up at 9 in the morning just to.
9 in the morning.
9 minutes, you get
No, I mean,
Who
she
gets
gets to
up at
start
9?
preparing lunch and then start preparing lunch at night.
Anyways, so you should know that there are lists and lists. There are long lists, and I'm sure you can find them on the internet. Long lists of insect koshering. Of insect laws when it comes to fruits and vegetables. The various fruits and vegetables. There's the various lists of how to check them, and I'm gonna leave it at that. But you're thinking what? You think it's outdated?
You know what?
Rob is not happy.
2,000 years ago.
Yeah, 2,000 years ago. You're talking about the evolution of insects. Okay, let's hear
I'm
this.
talking about the evolution of food processing.
Okay, and what happens? They make strawberries differently today?
They present them to the consumer differently.
They polish them in Publix. They spray something on the apple and they make it like shiny.
They sprayed them long before they got to Publix.
Rob,
I mean, really.
you know that there's more insects than human beings on
I'm
Earth?
buying into most of it. But don't tell me that the way they put strawberries on your table today is the way they put strawberries on your table 2,000 years ago. Do I believe in washing? Yes. But washing 3 times and with a sponge and it's really overkill, I think.
Look, Rob, if you really want to know, I mean, I hate to do it right now, but if you go to Google, to invent this, you know what I mean? You go to Google and you just search, look at pictures. There's actually a book I have at home which has close-ups of the insects that are actually found in regular food today. No, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You know, there's people that go with like a magnifying glass and they go to a restaurant, order a salad. You know what I mean? And they go to the magnifying glass, they see what's going on over there. It's a little scary, which is why when you go to a kosher restaurant, you know, there's a mashgiach that's checking your fruits and vegetables. It's a totally different kettle of fish.
You know, Rabbi, I stand in shul with people. I wish they were as careful washing themselves as they were washing their fruits and vegetables.
Fair enough. People should take baths and showers. No worries. But you know what? We should also be sure, you know, and we're very careful of the food that comes into our mouth. Are we careful of the stuff that comes out of our mouth? Let's be just as careful, right, of the stuff that comes out of our mouth. But you know what? 2 wrongs don't make a right. So just because people need showers, okay, fair enough. People need to watch what comes out of their mouth, fair enough. But people should be cognizant of what comes into their mouth. Because Nachmanides tells us, when it comes to one of the rationales for kosher, he says, you are what you eat. And you become, you become the nature of the food that you eat. So if you eat violent animals, you become violent. That's why we don't eat birds of prey. But can you imagine what happens if you eat like some burrowing earthworm, God forbid? I mean, seriously, you want to develop these kind of characteristics?
Yeah.
It's not good for business. Not good for business, eat an earthworm. All right, guys, let's race to the finish here. I'm going to go just a few more minutes.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I think with the advent of everything being organic, you probably have more insects.
Yeah.
Oh, Tazoy. I was going to say that. So Marty says, for those that didn't hear it, Marty says that organic farming methods basically means, you know, when you go to a hotel today, they're like, we love the environment so much, so we're not going to wash your towels. Right? It's not because we're worried about our FP&L bill. It's not because we're worried about hiring more people. It's just that we care about the environment, so we're not going to wash your towels, right? Same thing over here. It's like, you know, organic farming means, you know, in the name of green earth, we're not going to spray insecticides. So the chances, I was going to say this before, that the chances of you having more infestations and not less is elevated.
Absolutely. And the fact that you eat more in restaurants than at home, you're guaranteed that the people behind the scenes in restaurants don't wash their fruits and vegetables as well as you could.
They're not buying organic.
One of the hardest jobs in a kosher restaurant, by the way, one of the hardest jobs, is they always go to the back of the restaurant and see the mashgiach sweating bullets over there. He's got a double, triple sink. He's rinsing in this one. He's washing in that one. He's soaking. He's got the salt one. He's got all sorts of stuff going on. The mashgiach, the job of the mashgiach is to know how to handle this stuff.
You actually do.
You got a bigger problem. The fact is that it's schwitzing in like this.
I feel much more secure biting into my burger knowing that the piece of lettuce on my burger, right, has been washed and rinsed and soaked than knowing that I don't know where it came from. Who knows?
The old adage,
It's like eating a non-kosher hot dog today. Just by the way, eating a non-kosher hot dog. You have no clue what went into that hot dog. You have no, I mean, they found mouse in there. right? Mouse ears or something. You never heard of that?
Non-kosher.
They're non-kosher, yeah.
Mainly it's knees and lips.
I'm losing my crowd over here. Let me tell you, I don't think they like it. It's not a popular. It's not a popular.
Well, whatever.
You see the numbers plummeting on Facebook. You know that you're in trouble. What?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're trying to eat breakfast exactly. Somebody's biting into a salad. Like, oh, I don't know. I won't hear this rabbi anymore.
Nobody's eating breakfast while listening to you now today.
We're the live studio audience. You're not leaving, but the guys are around the breakfast table right now. All right, we should be sensitive. Okay, fine, guys. We're going to be sensitive. I'm going to try to race through it over here. Okay. So, fruits and vegetables which were preserved. What about if they were preserved? Right? Let's say you put them in. They were like, I don't know, some sort of like the jam preservatives, right? Right. Then those ones, if the fruits and vegetables are such that are likely to be infested, then you still need to check them. Right?
Even after you preserve.
Yeah, if you can, obviously. Except that if 12 months have passed since they've been taken off the tree, you do not need to check them because the likelihood of there being anything left in there is null, and they probably have just died and disintegrated just like earth, right? But you do need to make sure that there's no dead insects on them anymore, so you need to like dust them or brush them off if you can. We're talking about like dried fruits and vegetables and apricots, like that kind of like the dried stuff, right? Like you get those apple rings, the dried apple rings. If you see like a black spot in there, you should be careful. You're like,
Not so good.
exactly. Nevertheless, if they have been, no, don't worry. Okay, fine. Now, what happens if you have a food that has a fruit or vegetable, cooked food, right? That you found inside of it some worms. If you found one or two, and I'm talking about insects, if you found one or two, then take them out and you can carry on eating the food. But if you found three, now you've got a problem. You have to suspect that the whole thing is really, three is a crowd, right? So you find three, now you got a problem. You can't eat the rest of the fruits, right? Of the fruit. But if it's of vegetables, it's not going to help to check it after it's been cooked. But if it's fruits or something like cooked mushrooms that you still are able to check after cooking, then it's okay to check it after the cooking. So it depends on the circumstance. So obviously, you check it only if you can. So if you found three, you're in trouble. Now, if you have a vegetable soup, a minestrone, right? And you found in it three swimming insects, backstroke, right? Then you're not allowed to... then you're not allowed to eat this. You're not allowed to drink the soup before you put it through a strainer. And the vegetables, if they were infested, it will not help them to be checked after they were cooked. You can't eat them at all. But if you check the vegetables before cooking, and then you found the worms in the soup powder, the powder of the soup, all you need to do is just strain the soup and wash the vegetables, and then you're allowed to eat it. Now, something very interesting. I'm sure you remember your mothers or grandmothers sifting flour. You remember this? Sifting flour, right? We all sift flour and rice. Also, remember the rice? They would like check the rice. Remember checking rice? They would take it one at a time and look for the infected ones, and they throw them away. Right, they're looking for bugs, right? So now when it comes to flour, if you found insects, you have to always sift your flour. If you found insects in your flour, you can't just take it off the bag and pour it in, right? You got to put it through a strainer. So if you found insects in your flour, even if they came from the flour, they're not allowed to be eaten, because we worried that when they came from the flour, they crawled on the earth or on the side of the bag in which they're in, and therefore they came back in. So they left and they came back in. We spoke about this earlier, which makes them creepy crawlies and biblically prohibited, right? And therefore you can't eat them. Therefore, what do we have to do? Anytime you have flour, you have to make sure to sift it properly and to make sure that it has no insects. Very important to sift your flour before using it, and it will not help to take just a little sample, to sift a sample, even if you found the sample totally fine. Now, if you forgot to sift your flour and you made bread out of it, then you are allowed to eat it ex post facto, from the flour that was unsifted. But if you did have leftover flour from that original batch, check that original flour that's still left over that wasn't baked yet, right? And if you found that clean, then you can assume ex post facto that it's fine. But if you do find in the original batch some insects, then you can't eat the rest of the flour that was baked already.
You have to throw out the bread.
Yeah, exactly. This becomes, it's called the clawback. It's like the burning made of clawback, right? So it's already baked. But because you found the earlier version of it had infestation, then the whole thing gets clawed back. It goes to the garbage. Right. Now, 2-3 more points to raise over here. If you found cheese with worms, are they worms in cheese, like old aged cheeses that have worms in them? Or fish? Fish can easily have worms, right? Now, if there were worms that were formed from the aged cheese, again, it's asexual reproduction over here, right? But if there were insects that were formed from the aged of the cheese or from the aged fish, and they didn't come out of the fish or the cheese, then essentially by the letter of the law, there's no real problem here of eating them because it didn't crawl on the earth, right? Then you're allowed to eat the cheese and the fish with the worms inside of them, except that when it comes to the fish, since they were formed from the decomposition of the fish, you're not allowed to eat them because of the separate prohibition of disgusting, of an abomination. You're not allowed to eat them from the separate prohibition of you shall not abominate yourselves, right? But if they, I guess when it comes to cheese, you don't have that same prohibition of abomination. Interesting. But if they did come out of the fish or the cheese, and they, then obviously they're prohibited as creepy crawlies. Now, just to wrap this up, who is trustworthy? Who can you believe? If someone told you, I checked it. Who can you believe? It's the din of ne'emanos, the law of reliability. Every man and woman, including boys over the age of 13 and girls over the age of 12, are believed to check the food for insects, even if this food is typically infested. Except they have to know exactly what they're checking in order to know what they're looking for. So they have to know what they're looking for. So they can't just tell, yeah, I checked it. Did you know what did you check? I don't know.
So if there's a guy who...
we didn't get a guy yet. We're talking about men and women right now. So far, we're talking about Jews. Now, but a child under the age of 13 or a girl under the age of 12 or a Jew who's not observant, a Jew who's not observant, or a non-Jew.
Even the Jew who's not observant.
Exactly, are not believed. And you cannot rely on their checking for insects. People tell me, Rabbi, they tell me all the time, Rabbi, come to my house and I want to serve you lunch because I keep kosher. And I know that they mean well. Of course they think they keep kosher. But what they think is kosher and what I think is kosher is two different standards. It's not there's anything wrong with them. You know what I mean? It's
Circle K, not OU.
It's not even that. No, they think that they bought a kosher meat. It didn't occur to them. They cooked it in a non-kosher oven. It's not kosher. Or if you used a fork that was not kosher, it's not kosher, right? So they don't even know the many myriads of nuance, which is part of the kosher law, right? So therefore, the way I explain it to people is a peanut butter allergy. Peanut butter allergy is such that if you even use a knife that was used a week ago that wasn't cleaned properly with a little in the little nook over there that it was used for peanut butter, then a week later it could still, God forbid, be fatal to a person with the allergy, right? I say the same things with kosher. It's not anything that I can rationally tell you why it's this way, but this is the way, and it's toxic for my soul, for your soul too, by the way. And therefore, if you don't know the laws, then you can't be reliable for it. It's what?
So Rabbi, when we went to
Emes.
How were you, what was it about that made you comfortable?
When Rob took me out into a restaurant in Chicago, he wants to know why I was happy to eat in the restaurant. The reason was because I checked the kosher certification status. There was actually a certificate in the window, right, which says this is under the CRC, Chicago Rabbinical Council, which has a very reputable reputation. And you know that they are very reliable. But if you came to me, for example, imagine a guy pulls up in a truck in the front of here and he says, I have vaccines. You want vaccine? I have vaccine. Right? Would you say, yeah, sure. Here, put it in my arm. Right? Obviously, you wouldn't do that because you're like, I don't know who you are. I mean, even if I came to you with a vaccine, you'd probably be like, Rabbi, I like you, but not for vaccine injections, right? So, the same thing over here. A Jew that's not shomer Torah mitzvahs is not observant. As much as they have good intentions, and they surely are not trying to deceive you. They just don't know. So how can they certify something they don't know? Right? A person that doesn't see well, if he's able to see well using glasses or a microscope or some sort of a magnifying glass, that's good. You can rely on him, no problem. If somebody checked food for insects afterwards, right, it's reliable, right? And afterwards you looked and what's this? You found something in the food, right? And it was visible to the eye, then he loses his reliability, his credibility, right? And you cannot rely on him ever again unless there is a possibility that the insect came into the food after it was checked. Finally, what happens if you cut a fruit with a knife and you found after you cut it, you went straight through an insect? Is the knife treif? Right? What you do is you wipe down the knife, clean it well, and when it comes to the fruit, just peel away the external layer on both sides of where the insect was, the depth of a thin peel, and you're good to go.
So a knife cutting a worm does not make a knife requiring.
No, a knife cutting a worm does not make the worm the knife treif. I'm sorry. That's it, and that concludes for us today's crash course, which was a little intense. I'm glad we finished it in 2 sessions. The laws of kosher insects. At least you know now what they are, how it works. And next week we go into foods that were cooked and baked by Gentiles, kosher food that was made by Gentiles. If there's any problem, what's called spoiler alert, there is a big problem. Okay, good. So we'll leave it here. Today is Thursday. I believe that there's a class for men and women on Hebrew language through the prayer book at 11:30 a.m. with Corey at jewishgardens.com/Zoom. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom. Thank you all. Have a great day and stay away from those insects. Shalom. Take care.
Did you have anybody left at the end?
Yeah, we had